The White Scars were never easy to understand. That was how they preferred it. While other legions built fortresses, the Fifth rode the wind. While others marched in perfect lines, they struck like lightning and vanished before the enemy could answer. The Imperium called them barbarians. They were wrong. Beneath the laughter, the scars, and the speed, there was philosophy, poetry, calligraphy, a belief that war was not just destruction. It was motion, a hunt, a rhythm, a song carried across the stars. And at the heart of that song stood Jaghatai Khan, the Warhawk, the Khagan, a Primarch who had never fit comfortably among his brothers. He did not crave thrones. He did not trust politics. He did not enjoy being watched, measured, or commanded. He valued freedom above glory, truth above obedience, and speed above everything. That made him dangerous, not to the Imperium, not yet, but to anyone who believed he could be easily controlled. The White Scars came from two worlds. One was Chagoris, a world of endless steppes, hard winds, and horse-borne tribes. There, boys learned to ride before they learned to read. They learned the weight of a blade, the patience of the hunt, and the discipline of the open sky. One of those boys was Tamu, a child of the Kinzan tribe. He was found stealing horses by the legendary storm seer Targatai Yesuge. Yesuge saw something in him, not just courage, not just wildness, potential. Under the knives of apothecaries and the trials of the Legion, Tamu died and was remade. He became Shiban Kam, one of the greatest warriors the Fifth would ever produce. The other world was Terra, cold, disciplined, measured. From its military academies came warriors like Heron Svensellen, a son of the Skandmark icefields. He had once been prepared for the Luna Wolves, for Horus, for a legion built on direct assault and absolute resolve. Instead, fate sent him to the White Scars. There, Heron became Torgan Kam, a Terran warrior among Chagorian hunters. At first, he struggled to understand them. They retreated when other legions would stand. They laughed in the middle of war. They wrote poems after killing. They treated battle like an art form. To Torgan, it looked like disorder. To the Khagan, it was mastery. Withdraw, return, strike where the enemy is weakest. Never let yourself be trapped by another man's idea of honor. That was the doctrine of the White Scars, and in the wars to come, it would save them. But it would also divide them, because the Fifth Legion was not as unified as it seemed. Chagorian warriors followed the Khagan with spiritual devotion. Terran-born officers respected him, but some still remembered other loyalties, other doctrines, other dreams. And in the shadows of the Legion, secret warrior lodges had begun to whisper. At first, those whispers seemed harmless. Brotherhood, ritual, private oaths between warriors. But across the galaxy, those same lodges had already helped turn legions against the Emperor. And soon, they would reach the White Scars, too. For now, the Legion hunted in the Chondax system. Their enemy was simple: orcs, green-skinned survivors hiding among asteroids and dead worlds. The campaign should have been routine, fast, clean, a hunt worthy of the Fifth. But then the silence came. Astropathic messages stopped. No orders from Terra. No word from the War Master. No confirmation from the wider Imperium. Only static. Only darkness. Even the Stormseers felt the ether trembling. Something terrible had happened beyond Chondax. Something vast enough to shake the warp itself. And while Jaghatai Khan waited for truth, one of his sons found the first sign that the danger was already inside the Legion. On the burning world of Themis IV, Shiban Khan discovered 3 dead loyal warriors. They had not been killed by orcs. Their throats had been opened by a Legion blade. Clean, precise, deliberate. Beside the bodies, Shiban found a silver lodge medal decorated with Chagorian patterns. But it was not Chagorian. It was an imitation, a lie wearing the shape of tradition. Shiban stared at the medal in silence. The enemy was no longer only outside. It was within. And the white scars were about to face the question every Legion feared. When the galaxy breaks, which side do you choose? The silence continued. Days passed, then weeks. The white scars remained trapped inside the Chondax system, cut off from the rest of the Imperium. No astropathic messages arrived. No navigators could see beyond the storms. The warp itself seemed wounded. Even the Legion's Stormseers struggled to read it. Targatai Yesuge spent long hours in meditation, listening to currents no ordinary human could perceive. When he finally emerged, he looked troubled. "The sea is screaming," he said quietly. "It has never screamed before." Jaghatai Khan needed no further explanation. Something had happened. Something capable of shaking the galaxy itself. Yet without proof, he refused to act. Unlike many of his brothers, the Khagan never rushed toward the first answer. He preferred uncomfortable truths over comforting lies. While the Primarch waited, life inside the Legion continued. Among those adapting to Chagorian culture was Torgun Khan. Born Harren Svensellen on Terra, he had entered the Fifth Legion believing discipline alone won wars. The white scars taught him otherwise. Victory belonged to movement, to surprise, to knowing when not to fight. The lesson came slowly, painfully. At first, every retreat felt like cowardice. Every sudden change of direction felt like disorder. Then he watched the Khagan wage war. Entire orc warbands disappeared before they understood they had been attacked. Supply lines collapsed without a major battle. Enemy commanders died without ever seeing the warriors who killed them. The white scars never fought the battle their enemy expected. That was their greatest strength. Even so, another battle was already unfolding, one no blade could solve. General Ilya Revalian had served countless imperial campaigns. She understood logistics, supply chains, fleet movements, numbers. Nothing in her long career prepared her for the Fifth Legion. orders were rarely written. Plans changed by the hour. Companies disappeared for days before returning with complete victories. To an outsider, it looked like chaos. To the White Scars, it was perfect harmony. Slowly, Ilya stopped trying to force order upon them. Instead, she began learning their rhythm. The Legion noticed. The Chagorians gave her a new name, Su Ilya, Wise Ilya. Few honors meant more among the sons of the Khagan. One of the first to treat her with genuine respect was Yasuge. The old Stormseer spoke little, but whenever they met, their conversations stretched for hours. He spoke of balance, of storms, of the difference between touching the warp and surrendering to it. Unlike Magnus, Yasuge never sought to master the immaterium. He listened to it. He accepted its dangers. He believed power without restraint always demanded a terrible price. Those words stayed with Ilya, though she did not yet understand why. Then another discovery changed everything. Shiban Khan returned from Femus IV carrying the Silver Lodge medal. The bodies he had found were beyond dispute. Loyal White Scars had murdered loyal White Scars, not in battle, as executions. The evidence reached the Legion's senior commanders. No one spoke. Everyone understood the implication. The warrior lodges had arrived, not openly, not as armies, as whispers, as private meetings, as promises made between brothers. Across the Imperium, similar lodges had spread through countless legions. Many dismissed them as harmless traditions. The Khagan did not. He ordered a quiet investigation. No accusations, no arrests. Not yet. He wanted facts, only facts. Then, at last, the silence broke. Astropathic choirs across the fleet erupted into agonized screams. Messages flooded in all at once, contradictory, fragmented, terrifying. Some claimed Horus remained loyal. Others declared him a traitor. One report insisted Leman Russ had destroyed Prospero without cause. Another claimed Magnus himself had betrayed the Emperor. Every transmission contradicted the last. Every voice demanded immediate action. The galaxy had finally spoken. And somehow, it had made less sense than silence. Every message told a different story. Some declared Horus remained the Emperor's most loyal son. Others claimed he had become the greatest traitor in human history. One astropath screamed that Leman Russ had murdered Magnus without cause. Another insisted Magnus had doomed the Imperium through his own arrogance. No report agreed with another. No source could be trusted. For many commanders, the answer seemed obvious. Choose a side. Act immediately. Jaghatai Khan did neither. He dismissed every transmission, not because he believed they were false, because he had no way of knowing which one was true. If every messenger contradicts the last, he told his captains, then the messenger is no longer the source of truth. We will find the truth ourselves. The decision shocked many within the Legion. Some Terran officers argued they should obey Horus. After all, he was still the War Master. Others believed they should immediately return to Terra and stand beside the Emperor. The Khagan refused both options. He would not condemn a brother based on rumors, nor would he blindly obey orders carried through a broken warp. He chose a third path, Prospero. If Magnus truly had fallen, the ashes of his world might still hold answers. Not everyone welcomed that decision. The warrior lodges had already begun poisoning the Legion from within. Among their most influential voices was Jaghatai Khan, a respected commander, a trusted officer, a man who quietly urged others to support Horus. Not openly, not yet. He simply asked questions. Why had the Emperor censured Magnus? Why had Rus been unleashed against another Primarch? Why had Terra fallen silent? Every question planted another seed of doubt. The Khagan noticed. He said nothing. For now. Elsewhere in the fleet, General Ilya Ravalian watched the growing tension with increasing concern. She had spent enough time among the White Scars to recognize when smiles became forced, when conversations stopped as she approached, when old friendships quietly divided into separate circles. The Legion was still united, but only on the surface. Beneath it, something was cracking. Only Jaghatai seemed strangely calm. The old Stormseer had sensed this moment long before anyone else. The storm doesn't choose who is right, he told Ilya. It only reveals who they truly are. She asked him whether he believed Horus had betrayed the Emperor. Jaghatai looked toward the stars before answering. I don't know. And anyone who claims certainty today is lying. The fleet finally prepared to leave Chondax, but another obstacle stood in its path. Without warning, hundreds of warships emerged along the system's outer edge. Not orcs, not Imperial reinforcements. The Alpha Legion. Their vessels formed a perfect blockade across every viable escape route. Yet they made no move to attack, no boarding actions, no bombardment. They simply waited, as if their true objective wasn't to destroy the White Scars, but to keep them exactly where they were. The Khagan studied the tactical display for several long minutes. Then he smiled. At last, something made sense. If they wanted us dead, they would already be firing. They don't fear our guns. They fear where we're going. For the first time since the silence began, Jaghatai Khan believed he understood the enemy's strategy. Someone desperately wanted the White Scars to remain isolated, which meant leaving Chondax was no longer simply an option. It had become a necessity. The Alpha Legion never opened fire. That was the first clue. Their fleet stretched across the edge of the Chondax system, perfectly positioned to prevent any escape. Every route into the warp was covered. Every likely course of retreat had already been anticipated. Yet they remained motionless. No demands, no threats, no attack. Only silence. Many commanders interpreted it as hesitation. Jaghatai Khan saw something different. If they wished to destroy us, he said, studying the tactical display, they would already be doing it. They don't want us dead. They want us trapped. That single realization changed everything. The White Scars had spent months believing they were isolated by chance. Now the Khagan understood the truth. Someone had gone to enormous lengths to keep the Fifth Legion away from the wider war, which meant the Legion mattered far more than anyone had realized. The question was, to whom? The answer came sooner than expected. An Alpha Legion envoy requested permission to enter the flagship. Against the advice of nearly every officer present, Jaghatai allowed it. The messenger arrived alone, calm, confident. He carried no weapon, only a sealed data cylinder bearing the personal sigil of Alpharius. Inside was a simple message. The War Master had taken command of the Imperium. The Emperor had become a tyrant. Magnus had been murdered by Leman Russ. The White Scars were ordered to join Horus immediately. The envoy spoke without emotion, as though reciting established facts. "Horus does not seek your submission," he said. "He seeks your friendship. The Imperium you knew is already dead." Several Terran-born officers exchanged uncertain glances. Some wanted to believe him. Others wanted to execute him where he stood. Jaghatai did neither. Instead, he asked one question. "If Horus wishes to welcome us, why surround my fleet?" For the first time, the Alpha Legionary hesitated. Only for a heartbeat, but the Khagan noticed. "So that's it," Jaghatai said. "You were never sent to recruit me. You were sent to delay me." The meeting ended immediately. The envoy was allowed to leave unharmed. As the doors closed behind him, the Khagan turned to his captains. "The enemy has already answered our question. Horus fears where we might choose to stand." That meant the White Scars still possessed something priceless: choice. The Khagan had no intention of surrendering it. He summoned every senior commander aboard the Swordstorm. Among them stood Chin Shah, Shaban Khan, Torgan Khan, Targatai Yesagay, and General Ilya Ravalian. Jaghatai spoke only once. "We leave tonight. Not by force, not by attrition, by speed." The maneuver had existed for generations on Chagoris. Among the tribes, it was known simply as the Zhao pattern. The chisel. Pretend to retreat, invite pursuit, then strike one point with overwhelming speed before the enemy can react. No legion in the Imperium executed high-speed maneuvers like the White Scars. No fleet accelerated as quickly. Every engine aboard the Fifth Legion's ships had been modified for one purpose: velocity. The crews prepared in absolute silence. Engine coils glowed brighter than ever before. Helmsmen waited for a single command. Across the void, the Alpha Legion watched the White Scars slowly fall back, exactly as expected. Exactly as planned. Or so they believed. Then the Khagan gave the order. Now. In a single heartbeat, the entire White Scars fleet changed direction. The Alpha Legion realized its mistake too late. For several minutes, the White Scars fleet appeared to be retreating. Formation loosened. Ships drifted apart. Engine signatures dropped. To an outside observer, it looked like hesitation. Exactly the reaction Alfarius had expected. Then the countdown reached 0. Across hundreds of vessels, engine coils ignited at once. The void itself seemed to explode. Every White Scar's warship accelerated beyond standard combat velocity, driving toward a single point in the blockade. Not the strongest position, the weakest, the chisel, the Zhao pattern. The Alpha Legion had only seconds to respond. It wasn't enough. Like the tip of a spear, the sword storm tore into the enemy formation. Escort frigates fired full broadsides as they passed. Attack craft flooded into the breach. Behind them, the rest of the 5th Legion followed with impossible precision. The Alpha Legion tried to regroup. Too slow. Their battle line folded inward just as the White Scars burst through it. For a brief moment, the blockade ceased to exist. Jaghatai had no interest in pursuing the enemy. Speed had always been the objective, not annihilation. "Do not turn," he ordered. "Keep moving." The fleet plunged into the warp before the Alpha Legion could rebuild its formation. Only then did the Khagan reveal their destination. Prospero, the world of Magnus. Some officers exchanged uneasy glances. Prospero had already fallen. Whatever answers remained there would likely be buried beneath ash. Even so, Jaghatai refused to abandon the journey. "I've heard enough lies," he said. "Now I will look upon the truth." Days later, the fleet emerged from the warp. Prospero hung before them, dead. Once, the planet had been one of the Imperium's greatest centers of learning. Crystal pyramids had reflected the light of its twin suns. Libraries held knowledge gathered across centuries. Now, everything was black. The city of light was gone. Its towers lay shattered across the desert. The atmosphere carried ash instead of wind. Nothing moved. No Vox signals, no orbital traffic, no life. The Khagan landed with only a small escort. Among them were Chin Sha, Yesagay, and several Keshig bodyguards. As they crossed the ruins of Tizca, even veteran space marines fell silent. Books had burned where armies once marched. Observatories had collapsed into glass. Entire districts had simply ceased to exist. Whatever had happened here, it had not been a battle. It had been an execution. Then something moved. Not a survivor, not a space marine. A creature woven from the warp itself. A Psychnoiine. It descended without warning, its translucent form drifting through the ruined streets like a nightmare given shape. Bolter rounds passed straight through it. The creature barely slowed. A second appeared, then a third. Within moments, dozens surrounded the expedition. The Keshig drew their tulwars. Bolters thundered across the silent city. Nothing worked. The creatures ignored every conventional attack. For the first time since arriving on Prospero, the White Scars realized they were no longer fighting an enemy of flesh. They had stepped into the aftermath of something far older. And somewhere beneath the ruins, someone was still waiting for the Khagan. The creatures were not alive, not in any way the White Scars understood. The Psychnoine drifted silently through the shattered streets of Tisca, their translucent bodies slipping between broken walls as though stone no longer existed. Bolter fire passed through them. Power blades found no flesh to cut. Every instinct told the Legion they were fighting ghosts. One of the creatures lunged at a Keshig warrior. It did not slash. It did not bite. Instead, a long, needle-like proboscis pierced the Space Marine's helmet. The warrior froze instantly. His scream never reached the Vox. Within seconds, blood poured from beneath his armor as the creature drank directly from his mind. When it finally released him, the legionary collapsed lifeless onto the ruined streets of Prospero. Another Psychnoine descended. Then another. The entire expedition suddenly found itself surrounded. Jaghatai Khan reacted first. His tulwar swept through the nearest apparition. Again, nothing. The blade passed straight through. Even a Primarch could not kill what did not truly exist. It was Yesugei who understood. "The warp," the old Stormseer said. "They're sustained by it." Without waiting for permission, he reached into the Immaterium. Since the Council of Nicaea, the Stormseers had hidden their gifts. The Emperor had forbidden librarians from using psychic powers. But this was no ordinary battlefield. Without the warp, everyone here would die. Blue-white lightning erupted from Yesugei's staff. For the first time, the creatures recoiled. One dissolved into ash, then another. The White Scars immediately understood. Only psychic force could truly destroy them. Together, the Stormseers unleashed the storm. The air filled with crackling energy. Warp-born predators vanished one after another. Silence slowly returned to the ruins. No one spoke. Even those who had supported the Edict of Nicaea now struggled to deny what they had witnessed. Without Yesugei, none of them would have survived. The old Stormseer simply lowered his staff. "There is a difference," he said quietly, "between serving the warp and becoming its servant." The words lingered long after the battle ended. The expedition continued toward the reflecting caves beneath Tisca. Magnus himself had once walked these halls. Here, mirrors carved from impossible crystal reflected more than faces. They reflected memory, regret, truth. As the White Scars entered the ancient caverns, reality itself seemed to bend. Voices echoed where no one stood. Shadows moved independently of light. Even the Primarch slowed his pace. Then, a familiar figure appeared. Not flesh, not truly alive. A ghost woven from the warp. Magnus the Red. The Crimson King looked nothing like the arrogant scholar remembered by his brothers. His image flickered like a dying flame. His voice carried centuries of grief. "You came," Magnus said softly. Jaghatai studied the apparition in silence. He had crossed half the galaxy searching for answers. Now, one of his oldest friends stood before him. And the truth he carried would change everything the Khagan believed about the war. Magnus had become a shadow, not truly alive, not truly dead. A fragment of the Crimson King lingered inside the reflecting caves, held together by memory and the lingering currents of the warp. Jaghatai stared at the apparition for a long moment. Among all his brothers, Magnus had always been the one he understood best. Both had valued knowledge over dogma. Both had questioned certainty. Both had refused to become blind followers. Now, one of them stood broken. "You came too late," Magnus said. His voice echoed through the crystal chambers like distant thunder. Jaghatai ignored the bitterness. "I came for the truth." Magnus smiled sadly. "So did I." The Crimson King slowly walked through the shattered reflections surrounding them. Every step revealed another memory. Prospero before the fire, the great libraries, the pyramids of Tizca, the 1,000 suns studying beneath endless skies. Then the visions changed. Fire, bolter shells, the space wolves, the city burning. "You've heard many stories," Magnus said. "Some call me traitor. Others call Russ a butcher. The truth is more complicated." He spoke of the Council of Nicaea, of the Emperor's command to abandon psychic practice, of his own arrogance. When Horus began his rebellion, Magnus had tried to warn the Emperor. Desperate to reach Terra, he unleashed a psychic ritual unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. The warning succeeded, but the cost was unimaginable. The Emperor's hidden webway project was shattered. The great wards protecting it collapsed. Demons flooded into the impossible city beneath Terra. "I wanted to save him," Magnus whispered. "Instead, I doomed everything." Jaghatai listened without interruption. He had expected excuses. Instead, he found regret, real regret. Then Magnus revealed the final deception. It wasn't Russ who betrayed us. It was Horus. The War Master manipulated everything. The order to destroy Prospero was never meant to be mercy. It was meant to divide us. The Khagan lowered his eyes. For weeks he had refused to believe either side. Now the truth stood before him, broken, ashamed, impossible to ignore. Magnus looked toward his brother one last time. "We were made to fight each other. That was always the plan. A Primarch can destroy a Primarch. No one else." The words struck harder than any weapon. The Heresy wasn't simply a civil war. It had been designed that way from the beginning. Brother against brother, son against father. Every victory feeding chaos, every loss strengthening it. The Crimson King's image began to fade. His strength was nearly gone. "There is still time," he said. "Terra still stands. But not for long. You must choose." The apparition dissolved into countless fragments of light. Silence returned to the reflecting caves. For several moments, no one moved. Then Jaghatai slowly drew his tulwar. With a single clean strike, he shattered the last lingering echo of Magnus. Not in anger, not as punishment, as an act of mercy. The ghost disappeared. At last, the Crimson King found peace. When the Khagan emerged from the ruins of Tizca, he looked toward the waiting fleet. His decision had finally been made. "We return," he said, "not to Horus, to Terra." But before the White Scars could begin the journey home, the enemy hiding within the Legion would make its move. The journey home never began. Not immediately. The enemy had been traveling with the White Scars all along. For months, the warrior lodges had worked in silence. No banners, no declarations. Only whispered conversations in forgotten chambers. Private oaths, hidden meetings. Promises that Horus offered a better future than the Emperor ever could. Their leader within the Legion was Jaghatai Khan, a respected commander, a trusted warrior, one of the Khagan's own officers. That trust was exactly what made him dangerous. As the fleet prepared to leave Prospero, Jaghatai finally acted. His followers moved at the same moment across dozens of ships. Bridge crews were murdered. Vox relays sabotaged, navigation stations seized. The rebellion spread before anyone understood it had begun. At the center of the uprising stood the Sword Storm, the Legion's flagship. If Jaghatai controlled it, he controlled the 5th Legion. Jaghatai Khan was among the first to react. He had suspected the lodges ever since Themis IV. Now those suspicions became reality. Brother was killing brother. Again. The corridors of the flagship echoed with bolter fire. White armor turned red beneath the emergency lights. No one knew who could still be trusted. Torgan Khan found himself standing between two worlds. Born on Terra, raised among Chagorians, he understood both sides better than anyone. Many of the rebels were Terran-born officers, warriors he had trained beside for decades. Some begged him to join them. Horus has already won. The Emperor abandoned us. The War Master offers a future. Torgan looked at them for a long moment, then slowly drew his blade. I swore an oath. I don't abandon my oaths. The first rebel charged. Torgan met him head-on. The duel lasted only seconds. When it ended, another loyal son lay dead. Not because he had betrayed the Legion, because he had chosen the wrong master. Elsewhere aboard the Sword Storm, the rebellion reached the command deck. Jaghatai's warriors stormed the bridge with overwhelming force. Officers died where they stood. Servitors exploded beneath concentrated bolter fire. For a brief moment, the flagship belonged to the traitors. Then the doors opened. Jaghatai Khan entered alone. The bridge fell silent. No speeches, no accusations. The Khagan simply looked at the warriors before him. Many lowered their weapons, not from fear, from shame. Hasik did not. "You've chosen the wrong side," he said. The Khagan shook his head. "No, I chose mine. You abandoned yours." With that, the last civil war within the White Scars began. Not between legions, not between Primarchs, between brothers who had once ridden beneath the same banner. And only one side would leave the bridge alive. The bridge became a battlefield. No one gave an order. No one needed to. The moment Jaghatai Khan stepped forward, every warrior understood that the fate of the 5th Legion would be decided here. Hasik Noyan Khan struck first. His blade flashed toward the Primarch with the speed of a master swordsman. Jaghatai turned the strike aside with almost effortless precision. The clash echoed across the command deck. Around them, loyalists and rebels threw themselves into desperate combat. Bolter fire ripped through control consoles. Warning sirens screamed as damaged systems failed one after another. The sword storm itself seemed to tremble beneath the violence. Hasik attacked again and again. Each strike carried years of experience. Years of loyalty that had slowly been poisoned by Horus's promises. "You've doomed the Legion," Hasik shouted. "The War Master offered us freedom!" Jaghatai's expression never changed. "No, he offered you certainty, and you accepted it without asking whether it was true." The Khagan stepped inside Hasik's guard. His tulwar moved once, only once. The traitor staggered backward. For a heartbeat, he remained standing. Then his weapon slipped from his hand. Hasik collapsed to the deck. The rebellion died with him. Across the bridge, the surviving conspirators lowered their weapons. Some surrendered, others fought to the death. Within minutes, it was over. Silence settled across the flagship. The White Scars had survived. But they were no longer the legion that had entered Chondax. Too many brothers had died by one another's hands. Too much trust had been broken. Jaghatai looked across the blood-soaked command deck. "There will be no executions." The officers stared at him in surprise. The Khagan continued. "Those who willingly betrayed their oaths are already dead. But those who were misled will earn redemption. Not through forgiveness, through service." He announced an ancient Chogorian judgment. Sagyar Mazan, the hidden path. The warriors who had followed Hasik but still remained loyal to the Legion itself would surrender their names, their honors, their heraldry, their place within the Brotherhood. They would become warriors without glory. They would fight only the battles no one else wished to fight. Impossible missions, suicide assaults, until death finally judged them. No medals, no songs, no remembrance. Only redemption. Torgan Khan stepped forward first. Though he had remained loyal, he asked permission to join them. Many stared at him in disbelief. "You owe no penance," Chin Sa said. Torgan slowly shook his head. I failed to see the betrayal growing beside me. I'll carry that failure. Jaghatai studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. So be it. One by one, more warriors came forward, not because they had been ordered, because they could no longer bear the weight of what had happened. The Sagyar Mazan were born that day, not as punishment, as a final chance to restore honor. The white scars set course for Terra at last. But between them and the throne world still lay the greatest storm the galaxy had ever known. And somewhere beyond that storm, Mortarion was waiting. The white scars finally turned toward Terra. But the galaxy had one last trial waiting for them. The ruin storm. No fleet had crossed it intact. Entire armadas had disappeared inside its impossible tides. Navigation no longer obeyed mathematics. Time no longer obeyed reason. Even the navigators struggled to see a path forward. For weeks, the Fifth Legion searched for a way through. Every route ended in madness. Every warp translation carried the risk of never returning. The Legion was running out of time. With every passing day, Horus moved closer to Terra. It was then that Yasuge revealed what he had been searching for. There was another path, older than the Imperium, older than the Great Crusade. A forgotten webway junction hidden deep within a place called the Dark Glass Station. The structure had been built around technology no human fully understood. At its heart stood a throne unlike the Golden Throne on Terra. Smaller, cruder, a prototype, but powerful enough to tear open a stable passage through the webway itself. The cost would be unimaginable. Jaghatai immediately understood. No. He didn't even ask what the price would be. Yasuge smiled. You already know. The old storm seer had seen this future long ago. He had simply hoped another road might appear. None had. Meanwhile, the traitors finally caught up. Mortarion's fleet emerged from the warp alongside the Emperor's children under Lord Commander Eidolon. The Death Guard did not intend to destroy the White Scars. They intended to trap them. Every minute spent fighting was another minute lost, another minute for Horus to tighten his grip around Terra. The Battle of Dark Glass began. Traitor warships surrounded the station. Boarding torpedoes slammed into its ancient hull. Death Guard legionnaires poured into the corridors. The Sagyar Mazan answered them first. Torgan Khan led the disgraced warriors without hesitation. No banners, no honors, only purpose. Every corridor became a final stand. Every chamber another sacrifice. For the first time since their exile, the Legion no longer saw traitors. It saw brothers buying time. As the fighting intensified, Yasuge walked alone toward the throne. Shaban Khan tried to stop him. So someone else can die? Yasuge asked gently. There is no someone else. The Stormseer placed one hand on Shaban's shoulder. When the wind changes, you do not command it. You become part of it. Those were the last words Shaban ever heard from his old teacher. Without another glance, Targatai Yesuge sat upon the throne of dark glass. And the machine awakened. The dark glass answered. At first, nothing happened. Yesuge remained seated upon the ancient throne, his eyes closed, his breathing steady. Then the station began to tremble. Power unlike anything the White Scars had ever witnessed surged through the forgotten machine. Walls groaned. Ancient mechanisms, silent for countless millennia, awakened all at once. Blue light spread across the chamber like rivers of living energy. The webway was opening. Outside the station, the battle reached its climax. Mortarion personally led the assault. The Death Guard advanced through clouds of poison and corrosive mist, grinding forward with relentless determination. Behind them came the Emperor's children, no longer the proud legion they had once been. Their armor shimmered with impossible colors. Their laughter echoed through the corridors. Every step brought them closer to the dark glass. Every minute brought them closer to Yesuge. The Sagyar Mazan stood in their way. Torgan Khan led the charge. The warriors who had once been condemned now fought harder than anyone else in the Legion. There would be no redemption through words, only through sacrifice. One by one they fell, holding corridors, destroying bulkheads, buying seconds with their lives. Every death allowed the rest of the Legion to move closer to salvation. Inside the chamber, Yesuge felt the machine pushing back against him. The dark glass was never meant for human hands. Its power tore through his body. His skin blackened, his armor cracked, blood streamed from his eyes. Still, he did not release the throne. Across the station, Jaghatai felt it. His oldest friend was dying. He turned toward the chamber. For a moment, he considered abandoning the evacuation, returning, standing beside Yesuge one final time. The Stormseer reached into the Khagan's mind before he could move. "You must not come." The words arrived without sound, only thought, only memory. "You have another road to ride." The Khagan closed his eyes. He understood. Some victories demanded witnesses, others demanded sacrifice. The chamber erupted with blinding golden light. Reality itself split apart. Where solid stone had stood only moments before, a vast gateway now stretched into infinity. The path of heaven. A stable road through the webway. The impossible had become real. Jaghatai wasted no time. "All ships, move!" One after another, the battered vessels of the White Scars entered the shining passage. The sword storm led the way. Behind it came the survivors, the wounded, the Sagyar Mazan who still lived. At the very end, Torgan Khan ordered his remaining warriors to fall back. Few obeyed. Most chose to remain behind. Their debt had not yet been paid. They held the line until the last loyal ship disappeared into the gateway. Only then did they turn to face the Death Guard one final time. Back within the chamber, the dark glass had reached its limit. Yesugei's body had become little more than ash held together by will alone. He smiled, not because he had survived, because the Legion had. With one final surge of strength, he released the throne. The station exploded. The gateway collapsed behind the departing fleet. Dark glass vanished forever. Mortarion watched helplessly as the white scars escaped beyond his reach. For the second time since Chondax, Jaghatai Khan had slipped through his enemy's grasp. Days later, the Fifth Legion emerged from the webway into real space. Ahead of them lay the Sol system. Terra, scarred, surrounded by warships, preparing for the greatest siege in human history. The White Scars had lost thousands of brothers. They had buried Yesugei. They had watched the Sagyar Mazan redeem themselves in blood. But they had arrived. When the walls of the Imperial Palace looked to the horizon, they would see riders coming through the storm. The sons of the Khagan, still loyal, still free, still ready to fight for the Emperor. The siege of Terra was about to begin.